I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a public hearing of the Judson Board of Trustees, and it's hereby called to order at 6 p.m. I'm pleased that you've taken time to join us this evening, and I'd like to extend each of you a sincere welcome from the entire board. Thank you very much for your interest in Judson ISD. I'd like to have you guys hit your buttons for being present so we can establish our quorum. Ms. Ryan? Ms. Stafford, one more. Confirm. Yeah. Okay. We have a quorum. Everyone is present, and so Dr. Field, I'll hand it over to you for the public hearing.
Yes, sir. So tonight we have our budget hearing, and then we will go into the specifics during the board meeting later on. But at this point, I'd ask Ms. Davis to come up and speak to us about the entire journey through the budget cycle, and then go into our budget recommendation for this evening. So, Ms. Davis.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Fields. Today, we are conducting the 2023-24 Judson ISD public hearing for the budget. At this time, we will be sharing with you only a presentation of the General Fund, Child Nutrition Fund, and Debt Service Fund, but we would like to present the proposal to adopt during the regular board meeting. So at this time, we're just sharing a presentation, and once we go into the regular board meeting, that's when we will be asking you to adopt the budget for the 2023-24 school year. I'd just like to go back and refresh our memory on how this timeline has worked for the budget process. We began our very first budget workshop back in February, and since then we have had a total of 5 budget workshops. Our last budget workshop was this past Tuesday, in which we made some recommendations, amendments to the approved compensation plan that was approved back in May. Today, we are holding the public hearing, and in a few minutes, once we begin our regular board meeting, we will ask the board to adopt the budget for next school year. Before we begin and we go into each one of the budgets, we have to present the budget to you by function, and in the last budget workshop, there were some questions related to each function, specifically some functions that were that had a variance of about $300,000 from where we are projected to end this school year. So I'll go through those right now with you, and you can see the slides up there. So what we have for the general fund specifically, we have our total revenue budgeted for next school year at about 240 million. But for our expenditures, our budget expenditures under function 11 instruction, we are projected to end the year at 140 million, but we're budgeting 152 million. And the reason for that being is because we have already approved a compensation plan with an increase of 3% for teachers and professionals, and an increase of 4% to our paraprofessionals and auxiliary staff. So once you take that increase, Function 11 includes those salaries. In addition, we also have to consider that the benefits, the cost of the benefits increase when the cost of the salary is increased. And then last but not least, we also added an additional benefit to our health insurance. We were paying $355, but we are adding $45 to that so that we can total $400. So when you consider all of that, plus the fact that either later this evening or next month we will be sharing with you our end of course star performance. We know that we want to be able to focus on ensuring that our students are performing at their best, and we need to consider some after-school programs and tutoring to help our students perform and bring them up to the standards that we all hope they perform at. So that being said, that accounts for the difference there in Function 11 instruction. If we scroll down to functions 31 and 32, you also see a difference of about 250K for guidance and counseling, and you see a difference of about 300,000 for social work services. And the reason that you see that variance is because we are doing more outreach since COVID. We all know the effects that COVID has had on both adults and our students, and we want to make sure that we budget appropriately in that area. We have our social workers and counselors working around the clock. They take alerts on Gaggle. There's no holiday for that. And once we get an alert, they work with our wraparound services. So even though we might not have our buildings yet, the work has already begun, and they make those connections with the parents, they make those connections with the services, and then after the services are completed, there's also the follow-up, and that's done by our personnel. So then we also see an increase, if you go a little lower down to function 36, you see an increase there of about 900,000, and that's extracurricular activities. One of the things that we noticed as we were working on the budget is that last year we under budgeted for the stipends. So we project to come out at 6 million cost on that at the end of this school year, which is just around the corner. And so once you consider that, once you consider the salaries that are coming out of there with all of those pieces, the increases, the additional benefits, the health insurance, that accounts for the cost difference there on function 36. And then for function 51, maintenance and operations, we're expecting an increased cost to our property and building insurance, as well as an increased cost to utilities. So we want to make sure that we're budgeted accordingly there. And then in function 53, for data processing, we have an increased cost there as well. As you know, a lot of our instruction focuses on integration of technology. And in doing so, we want to make sure that we budgeted appropriately for that function. And if you scroll down just a little bit more under function 81, you will see facilities. That facilities, you can see, is actually a decrease of about 1.5 million. But the reason for that is, if you recall earlier this year, you approved an amendment for a purchase of property. And so we don't need to add that in there. We go down to our original budget of about 1.295 for next school year. So that covers those function codes that have a difference of about 300,000. And so we wanted to be able to take the time right now during this budget hearing to share that with you in each of the functions. All right, so then we can move on to our general fund. And overall, again, we have discussed this over 5 budget workshops. So in summary, for our general fund budget, we have projected revenue of $239,673,795, with our budgeted expenses for total appropriations of $253,161. The difference being a deficit of $13,000,005, and that's for the general fund budget. When you take a look at the unassigned fund balance as of last summer, you've seen that that's 122 million. However, keep in mind, and we'll show you in a slide later on, that that's 122 million without remembering that we need to keep a cost of about 3 months for about 65 million. And so we'll show that in just a little bit about how we would like to commit that, because we know that we shouldn't touch that. And then, so our projected net revenue expenditure at the end of this year, that's just about to finish, is about 4.5 million. So once you take the entire projected unassigned fund balance at the end of this school year, that's just about to finish, 2023, we end up in 118,000. Once you
said thousand.
I'm sorry, yes, 118 million. Once you go into next year, and we're predicting a deficit of about 13 million, then the projected unassigned fund balance is 104. But keep in mind that right now I'll show you a slide where we're going to start accounting for all of those additional expenses that will recur, that will come back with ESSER and with our 3 months expenditures. So that's the general fund that we are proposing for this coming school year. Then we have our child nutrition budget. And what we have for this coming school year, 23-24, we are predicting a revenue of $20,140,000, and total appropriations of budgeted expenses is 24.7 million, for a difference of 4.5. Keep in mind, board members, that we've talked about having a required spend down plan. And so we already have that in place so that we can keep the amount of fund balance that we are supposed to keep in that area. So that's the child nutrition budget comparison and budget proposal for this coming school year. And then last but not least, we are sharing with you the debt service budget comparison. And that is, we are projecting right now to end the year at total revenue, 52 million, total appropriations of 49 million, for a difference of 2.9 million. Keep in mind that when we adopt the budget for each school year, we are supposed to share it with you by function, which we did. Most of the functions, of course, are in general fund that you see right here to your left. You have your child nutrition and your debt service. Now, how does this affect this fund balance over several years? I'm going back to our general fund in this case. As I mentioned earlier, at the end of 2021-2022, we had an unassigned balance of 122 million. When you take the commitment of the 3 months for operating and cash flow, you deduct the 63 million there. And so that leaves, plus our projected deficit for this school year that we're about to end at 4.5 million. So that leaves us at 55,174,000. We've talked about the stipends that you have approved. Some of those stipends are going to come from ESSER, and then some of the stipends are going to come from our fund balance. So once you take that into account, you take the 7.5 million for the 2024 spring stipends, and you also take the projected deficit at the end of next year of 13.5 million. So that leaves us with a total of a projected unassigned fund balance with a budget as presented and the current compensation plan of about 34,187,360. Now, one of the things that we were asked is to bring to you a 1% pay increase in addition to the increases that we already have in place. That 1% increase was a number that only includes teachers and paraprofessionals and auxiliary. We were asked to bring a 1% increase just for those people. It does not include central office administration, principals, so not the professionals. The professionals are not included in this 1% pay increase. And that would be at a cost of $2 million. And if you take into account the compensation plan amendments that we proposed and we shared with you on Tuesday, during Tuesday's budget workshop, that would be an additional $652,000. So if we take a look at that general fund with the additional 1% increase for teachers, paraprofessionals, and auxiliary, not for administration, that's $2 million more. And the comp plan amendments that we are proposing at $652,000, that leaves us at a fund balance of $31,526. If we take a 2%, we were also asked to share with you a 2%, just for the same group of people, teachers, paraprofessionals, and auxiliary staff. That 2% increase comes out to $4 million. And if you take that $4 million with the same comp plan amendments that we proposed on Tuesday of $652,000, that is a fund balance at the end of next year for $29,515,478. One of the things that we'd also like to point out is that we did add into our budget those supplanted ESSER positions to the tune of about 7 million. But at the end of next year, we also need to consider that we might need to bring back these 7 million of the ESSER created positions, those positions that we created because we knew we were going to be receiving ESSER funds. And so even though we've put back into the budget for this coming school year the ESSER supplanted positions, we still have the ESSER created positions that we intend to bring back, or that we're going to bring to you for program review this coming school year, and a decision will need to be made by the board on that. At this time, this concludes the hearing. If you have any questions now.
I just have a quick question. So the 7 million for those reclaimed ESSER positions, the ones that we'll have to
Supplanted?
start paying, that's 7, so subtract that 7 million from the 29 million? Is that what I need to do?
For next school year, all of the ESSER created positions will have to, yes, you would subtract that from the 29 million, you are correct,
And
at the
that'll
end
be
of
the
next
fund
school.
balance.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank
So
you.
that would
Not
leave us with a
necessarily.
fund balance of 22 at the end.
Not necessarily. That 7 million won't necessarily kick in until after next school year.
That
the
is
following
correct.
year. So
Oh,
it
so
doesn't have
SR is
anything
covering
to
them
do
this
with the
year?
projected
Yes.
fund balance for the end of next year. She just wants to make sure that everyone is aware that those $7 million worth of
Jobs that
jobs
we're gonna
are
start
going to
covering.
come back.
Right.
And at some point, we're going to have to account for those.
Reoccurring.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
I have a question.
yes, Ms. Lambert.
How many unfilled, dollar-wise, how much in unfilled positions did we have for last school year? We should have that figure now, right?
Yes, so we just checked with our HR, and that's to the tune of 3.6 million, because we've already filled some of those vacancies for this coming school year, and that's about 128 vacancies.
I'd like to also reiterate that these weren't singular positions that were out for the year. This is all vacancies that we had for the year, regardless of the interval. You know what I'm saying? If someone we had to wait a month to replace a position, we counted the not paying for that position for a month as part of the total.
Because that's like about maybe 60 teachers or 55 teachers, depending on the salary, if you divide that into.
You're absolutely correct. If you were to take 36 times 2, I remember 36 was 1.6 million, so times 2, you're looking at about 60.
So we have most
70.
of our teaching positions filled, other than maybe 60 district-wide?
I would need to verify with HR. I do know that as of right now, there's about 128 vacancies. So I can provide you those specifics
Yeah.
in the Friday notes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Are we gonna talk about, remember I asked about the police officers? That
Yes.
we have to, are we gonna talk about that later?
Yes, ma'am, actually, and I can talk about it right now. So our police officers currently are at 240 days.
No, I mean,
We are later, not tonight, no, ma'am. We're not prepared to speak to exactly what we're going to do at every campus because it's such a new recommendation. So we have to sit down with the police force and say, how do we want to do this? And I don't want to speak too freely in an open
No,
session.
I understand.
You know,
I understand.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But we're going to bring that back to the.
Okay, when we bring it back, though, can we not only bring back the number of officers that we're gonna have to hire, how many vehicles we're gonna have to buy, how many weapons, everything, chief? You got me?
All of that
Thank
will be
you.
a part of the
So that
proposal.
we'll have all the information and we'll know what the total, because that's except for the vehicles, everything else, well, the vehicles and equipment, the bodies are reoccurring. So I just, one at every school. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, this is the public hearing portion, so we're going to, if there are no questions, conclude this portion of the meeting and get right into our regular meeting. So let me officially adjourn this meeting. We are adjourned at 6:20. So don't leave, because we're about to start again. All right. This is a regular meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees. It's hereby called to order at 6:21 p.m. As the Judson Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals and policies and oversee the management of the district. We are responsible for approving budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and to listen to reports from the superintendent. We are not here to make administrative or management decisions pertaining to the daily operations of the district. This is the responsibility of our superintendent. In compliance with the state government code on open meetings, tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted. This is a meeting in public, not a meeting of the public. As our guest, you are welcome to observe and listen. These proceedings are being video and audio recorded and will become part of Judson's permanent legal record. In order that the tape adequately reflect these proceedings, please silence your mobile devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it is legally mandated that these proceedings are recorded accurately, I may have to ask for periodically, should I notice any disruptions that are interfering with the recording capabilities. Once again, thank you. Thank you all for being here this evening. We've established a quorum, and I'd like to have you guys hit your buttons for being present. Hold on. Nope, hold on. Let me back up. Hold, 1 second. We're not. We're going to go back. Yeah. No, we did not vote on anything. In fact, we'll just go by roll. Ms. Canoyer?
Suzanne Canoyer, present.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Jennifer Rodriguez, present.
Ms. Eaton?
Deborah Eaton, present.
Ms. Ryan?
Monica Ryan, present.
Ms. Stanford?
Laura Stanford, present.
Ms. King?
Shatanya King, present.
And Jose Macias. I'm here. So now that we've established a quorum, Dr. Fields, do you want to do invocation?
Definitely. I would probably ask, yes, definitely. Please, everybody, stand. Before I do the invocation, I just wanted to take this time to say that as we come together to do what's best for the students in the district, as we treat each other well, as we invest in our people, we would ask that we all keep that spirit of doing what's best for the students of Judson Independent School District. If you could all bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you right now saying thank you for another opportunity to come together to do what's best for the students of Judson ISD. We would ask that you guide our conversations, guide our hearts, guide our intentions, all these things that we ask and pray in Jesus' name, amen. At this point, we need to remain standing for the pledge.
If you would remain standing, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. You may be seated.
Thank you, Dr. Fields. Thank you, Dr. Paganel.
Yes, sir.
So we will have acknowledgments for citizens to be heard. And so I'm going to call our first citizen. We have several. So the first citizen to come up is Ms. Marilyn McKinney, President of the Judson Education Association.
Good evening. I watched with great interest your meeting Tuesday evening. There were several things that were said that I found interesting. Quote, would like to get paid for the days they actually work. Quote, still working from home, part of the job responsibility. Quote, the staff wants to be paid for the days they work. Quote, I've stayed, it's in my blood. I stay because I believe in Judson ISD. I believe in paying people for what they do. Quote, I won't go anywhere. Fair wages for work done. These all pertained to administrators who worked days that they were not supposed to be working. I would refer you to your compensation plan of 22-23, 21, 22, 19, 20, 23, 24. It says, basis for pay for exempt employees, i.e. administrators, district office folks, etc. Exempt employees are paid on a salary basis for the number of months in their annual employment period. Payment on a salary basis means that employees are paid a fixed sum for the job regardless of the days or hours actually worked each week. And yet, 314 positions wanted to go back and be paid for the days they didn't take off that they were supposed to, that they worked anyway. As a classroom teacher, I work lots of days that I'm not paid for. This summer alone, because my teaching assignment has changed, I've put in several days planning for next year. I do it because I'm a dedicated professional. I love my job. I am dedicated to this district. I've been here 38 years. I'm not going anywhere. The cost that these people want was $587,000, which works out to $1,833 per person. That's slightly, that's not quite, the raise you are giving to teachers for 187 days next year. That's for like 6 days that they worked. That's appalling. Shame on you. Shame on them. This coming year, we have elementary people who are already being told by their principals, well, you have to come in and work 2 or 3 days. Oh, you'll be paid at the supplemental rate of $25 an hour? No. I'll use your own words against you. We would like to get paid for the days we actually work. We'd like to get paid for the work we do. You'll pay us for $25 an hour. My daily rate, that'll get you about 3 minutes an hour. You want to talk about equity? Let's talk about equity. If you're going to do this for administrators, then you come up with the 1% extra for teachers and hourly workers. Otherwise, shame on you.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Our next speaker on the topic of wages as well is Janelle Hayes.
Hi, my name is Janae Hayes. I've been working for Judson for 12 years. I'm a special education para, and I work at Millers Point Elementary School. I am a proud parent of 2 Judson graduates. I'm here on behalf of all support supports personnel, and I'm also a proud member of the AFT. As paraprofessionals, we are the backbone of our schools. We cover classes, assist wherever we needed, whether it's assist for teacher absences, when there's no subs, supporting other classrooms, even classrooms that sometimes we're not assigned to. We do help support the schools in the classrooms, even if it's not our own students. Again, we support wherever we're needed at the schools. A 4 to 5% increase, we need a 4 to 5% increase because $30 to $40 is not enough with today's inflation. I am the only working member of my household of 4. I'm also working, I have a 1 year left of schooling. I've been trying to get my degree to become a teacher myself for the 12 years that I've been at Judson. I've been trying to get my degree. I'm a year away from getting my degree, but I can't afford my tuition. My paycheck alone, most of my paycheck goes to my insurance. I work paycheck to paycheck. So an increase would help. But the little percent that we did, it helped me get gas maybe. But I support Judson, and what they do, but we need the support also as teachers and as parents. I thank the board for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes, and my apologies on pronouncing your name incorrectly. Our next citizen is going to be discussing bullying policy, Ms. Lisa Fox.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Lisa Fox, and I live in Alamo Heights ISD district. So why am I here tonight? And just a little bit of a history. I've been dealing with the school board for over 2 years before the incident I'm about to speak of. And just before y'all do spend money on y'all's budget for security purposes and police, y'all might want to ask what kind of weapons you're going to be purchasing, because most school shootings, they use AR-15s, and if you don't buy the right shields, there's no point of having a shield for the cops, just FYI. But 2 years ago, my son was attacked by his 7th grade football A team for wearing his club football jersey instead of Alamo Heights football jersey. His friends felt like they had to retaliate. They did 7 to 8 minutes in front of 3 adults, in front of this whole 7th grade, and only 2 boys out of probably about 10 were sent to alternative school and got out for good behavior. And my son had to switch schools because he could not handle it no more. I come here today because I had to push the admin to report this incident as bullying instead of an incident between students. Why is this? Because when a student makes a report anonymously to admin, to counselors, to their teachers, whoever, if they do not report it correctly according to this, which is called the bullying checklist, the state does not get the report because it does not meet their criteria. I just come here as a recommendation. I've been going to all the school districts around San Antonio in the last 2 months, saying that when a kid does report something anonymously for bullying or mistreatment, they should be given this material physically to educate themselves on how to report their incident and get help. I also want to say that there was a bill passed last year. It's called the SB 2050, and that gives you funds to get help with bullying, which also says that you have to now have an anti-bully policy committee for each campus in Judson. There also will be a bill being passed next year that will be helping with bullying and that. I also recommend that you guys look at what your current bully policy is for bullying and what the consequences are. A slap on the wrist is nothing. Bullying is a real thing, and instead of spending so much money on security, maybe make the kids feel safe, and maybe this wouldn't be so scary of shootings happening. I thank you for your time, and I will email your numbers, because I did request your numbers about how many reports have been made since 2019, and they are low according to CDC, but this is low numbers all over San Antonio districts. So it's not just Alamo Heights, not just Judson, it's all districts around San Antonio have low numbers and are not getting these kids help that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next citizen is Councilmember Kevin Hodges on compensation.
Mr. Board President, Board, Dr. Field, staff, everybody here, I came to talk about compensation tonight. Here I am again. The difference is this time we have $122 million, and I saw Ms. Davis's presentation tonight. I see how she's trying to earmark some of that money towards 3 months of reserves. I'd recommend the board formally adopt a policy where some of that money is earmarked. Otherwise, it looks like we have $122 million we can spend tonight. I'm here, I believe we can do 2% more for teachers. I feel strongly about it. I've looked at the numbers. Last year, this board was willing to go $25 million into our savings to pay for raises. Turns out we're only $4 million, right? That number could even change again. Since our presentation started in April, that number's continually gotten smaller. Let's hope that we put more money back into our savings this year. I also look at our numbers for next year. When you guys approved the compensation plan as it's posted on the Judson website today, you guys were willing to go $17 million. Ms. Davis's numbers that were presented during the public hearing now say $13 million. Okay, so that's $4 million, that's your 2%. If you were willing to go $17 million, let's go $17 million again, let's do the 2%. And I'm here, I'm always gonna advocate for teachers. We're short teachers, we have a new superintendent, we have a new school board. Let's give the principals the tools they need to do their job to make this district great. It is great, let's make it greater, okay? So that's what I'm here. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Our next citizen is also speaking on wages, Ana Flores.
Hello, I'm speaking for my mom. My name is Jasmine Alpazar. I just want to say that my mom works so hard just to support me and my sister. Sometimes she even hurts her back just to mop the floors. And I think she deserves more. Because sometimes they worry about pay. Sometimes they worry about the bills, the water bills, how they're going to feed us. And I just want to take that off my mom's back. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more citizen to speak today on wages, and I can't make up the last name, but it's Andrea Ferrier. What is the last name? Well, welcome. 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 We're not going to try to repeat that. But yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Ferrer Godoy. I am a proud member of the AFT, and I work for the SPED department at Candlewood Elementary. I am a single mom of 2 kids. I'm a struggle to support my family, but I also love my job. And I have bruises to support my statement. But also I am looking for a second one because those $30, $40 more on my paycheck can really help me to even pay my water bill. So my question for you is, do we matter? We need a real solution to help keep all of our support personnel working. And please show us. Vote for a meaningful 4 to 5% raise. I think we deserve it. We work really hard to prove it. We care about our kids. Our list of duties goes beyond of what is in paper, and that's because we love our job. We love our kids. And just please think about us. We deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That was our final citizen to be heard. So let's go ahead and go straight into our consent agenda. Are there any items that we needed to pull?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. What items?
C.
ma'am? Letter C?
Letter C.
Okay. So with the letter C, then I move that we approve consent items, letters A, B, D, E, F, G, H, and I.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. King. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Ms. Stanford, your item is C, consider and take action regarding approving expenditures equal to or greater than $50,000. You have the floor.
Thank you. When I looked into the details of this item, it's comprised of 3 things. Test cost for ACT at almost $61,000. Test cost for SATs about $154,000, and a GM vehicle.
Correct.
GM vehicle for $55,000. I would like to see these kinds of items separated, and so where they're more in like kind, so that we're not lumping something like a car into something like scholastic testing, just going forward. But I did have a question on the vehicle, just because I had asked you earlier what the purpose of it was for, who's it for, and if it's replacing rental costs, what are those annual rental costs?
Well, I can say that for, ever since I've been in Judson Independent School District, and I know that the vehicles that are there are 2006s, but we've always had two Ford Expeditions that people can sign out around the district if they're going down to Corpus for a professional development, Houston, Dallas, and they usually check it out as part of the white fleet. And now it's time to replace those vehicles because they're not functional. So we did it already with one, and this would be the second one that we're trying to purchase here. But in terms of the over 50,000, this isn't one that's separated. This is just for purchases that are over 50,000 that we bring to the board when they're big purchases outside of some of the requests that we're going to be asking for later on, an exemption from that. But if we have a one-time purchase for over 50,000 in the aggregate, we bring it on this particular board item. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd just like for the public to know what items go into figures like that, so that you know what it's comprised of. And I take all expenses like that seriously, so that's why I asked into it, is for your benefit. Thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
I'm sorry, since we have this one pulled, because I saw the SAT and ACT on there, and there's definitely looks like some good news stories, so thank you for the data on that. Last year, we did the SAT voluntary for the seniors, and it looks like the numbers kind of went down. Are we going to go back to having everyone do that next year, or are we going to do it as sign-up voluntary again? Last year, I think, was the first year we did it where seniors had to sign up for SAT.
I would defer to Dr. Toppin and, oh, excellent. There you go, Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Holmes.
Hello. Yeah, so we give the SAT every year to juniors across the board. And then we've given the SAT on a voluntary basis to seniors for as long as I can remember, as an opportunity for them to take it again at the school if they want to. So every kid gets the SAT their junior year.
Okay, great. Because, yeah, it looks like in terms of CCMR and TSI stuff, the numbers were really good. There were a lot of kids. I mean, TSI is a hard test. My daughter is one who did not pass TSI IA English, but her SAT score in English was more than high enough, so that worked to get her CCMR, and Texas State took all of that. Now, this was the first year we did ACT, though, right? Are we just going to try that for one more year and just kind of see how it goes? Because it doesn't look like we got a lot of, like, at least in terms of getting more kids to meet TSI and CCMR, not a huge return on investment, but again, it was our first year, so only 1 year of data.
So the question that was asked was how many students qualified for CCMR on the ACT that didn't qualify on anything else.
Yeah.
We're administering that their senior year, in the fall of their senior year, so they'll be able to use that for college applications.
Okay.
But a lot of kids at that point have met from TSIA or SAT or industry-based certifications or another thing. So we're generally not waiting until November of their senior year to try and capture them and make sure they're CCMR ready. That's why those numbers looked so low for the ACT. But yeah, we do plan on doing it again. They're separate tests that have different emphases. So each of them, I think, for certain groups of kids, it's super valuable for them to be able to take that test. So
I'd like to add to that one of the big pushes, especially for the students that I found out this year from JECA, is that the ACT qualifies you to apply to so many other exactly once you complete that exam. So I'd almost encourage it because you don't have to pay for all of them. You get automatic, referral for application purposes without having to pay.
And we want to offer that to all the students as an equity component, because the reality is if we don't bring kids, when we have them as a captive audience and we're asking them to go out and pursue that, a lot of kids just won't that really should. And so that gives them the opportunity for all of them to take it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions? Okay, then I move that we approve expenditures equal to or greater than 50,000.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. King. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So now we're at the discussion items. I guess. So discussion and possible action regarding the approval of amendments made to the approved 23-24 compensation plan. So what I'd like to say about this is that we're going to have a discussion centered on a few aspects of the budget, and we've had a lot of meetings related to budget. And so as we go through it, I'd like to start with some of the things like the raises that citizens brought forward earlier that we've discussed. But there will be some other amendments. So at this time, Dr. Fields, I'm just going to jump into the raises part of it because
Yes, sir.
it's an important reason. That's why we have an audience here today. And then, of course, we'll break down the other elements of the budget. So for my colleagues, what I'd like to do is we're going to approve amendments, and then at the end, we're going to approve the entire comp plan. So I think that would be the safest way. There's many ways we can do it, but I think that would be the best way to adjust it. So what I'd like to do is let's start with the elephant in the room. Let's start with the raises in terms of having some more discussions. And so, Dr. Fields, in our earlier meeting, you did mention, and I'm talking about the hearing we had, that there was $2 million, I think, for 1% raise for,
Yes, sir.
and of course, 2% raise was $4 million.
Yes, sir.
So that's where
And that's only for teachers?
Teachers' pay
and
grade,
right,
yes,
and
teacher
auxiliary.
pay- and auxiliary.
Not for professionals.
So that's naturally where I want to have board discussion on that, and so that's where we'll start. So I guess we'll try this discussion on that particular item, but let me clear. So if you want to discuss, go ahead and indicate that you want to speak. Request to speak, basically, so I can acknowledge you. Yes. So, Ms. Canoyers, go ahead.
Thank you. I've talked to a lot of people the last week or so, gotten a lot of emails, and done some serious thinking. As I've said before many times, I'm a retired teacher. I understand about pay. I understand about the work, and I truly do understand about how difficult it is. I don't have the frame of reference for what you're enduring now because I retired before the situation that we're in. I am concerned, though, about approving an additional pay raise, and here are my reasons. Number one, we have contracted with TASB for a salary study, and that's to take care of several things. We've heard for quite a bit of time that when we raised the entry-level salary for our paraprofessionals, maintenance, bus drivers, all those hourly employees to $15, we didn't account for the steps for experience along the way. And we've heard from a wonderful custodian over the year about how the head custodian is not making very much more than a brand-new custodian. I want our TASB survey to come in and tell us how to fix that. That's going to cost money. We've heard a lot about experienced teachers needing more in comparison to other districts. I want the salary study to come in and look at that and tell us how to fix it, and that's going to take money. So that's a concern because we don't know what that's going to be yet, and that'll be a recurring cost. Another thing that I'm concerned about is that the state legislature is still meeting. Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick are not going to give up until they get their vouchers. I have major, major concerns about what that will do to our enrollment. The money we get from the state's based on enrollment. If our enrollment decreases, our money decreases. Then with our ESSER money going and having to bring those salaries back in, that's a recurring cost as well. We're required now, in a safety bill that did pass, to have a law enforcement officer at every campus. We don't have that. We don't have that. But it's a requirement by September. They gave us some money to help. 28 cents a student. $15,000 a campus one time. raise the student allotment 28 cents. That's $7,000 for Judson. That's going to buy lots of police officers. There was some talking about the administrative amendment, and I want to comment on that is taking, those days were taken away from them 2 years ago. This just returns it. It's not a raise. It's returning what was taken 2 years ago in an attempt to save money for the district by closing for an extra week and mandating that everybody take their vacation then. So hourly workers really fought that. That went away, but the cut to those days was not given back. That stayed. So this is just returning that. And then I want us to talk about, because I keep hearing other districts are doing this, other districts are doing that, and I really want to caution you to look at the last 2 years, not just this year, but last year. Last year we did a 6% raise, 3% this year. It's 9%, plus a little more because it's 3% based on the 6% last year, you know. Other districts didn't do what we did last year. They're trying to catch up now. If you look at what we've done so far, we're still near the very top of the scale. So those are the things I want my fellow members to keep in mind. We don't have an endless bucket of money. I know you keep saying you're waving around that $127 million. That's not what, we don't have that. Recurring costs cannot continue to dump into the general fund. We can't take out a fund balance every year in a deficit budget. We have a new administration. We have a new CFO. And I have confidence, because that's what we're appointed them to do, to make sure that our projected budget is much more close than what it's been in the past. So at this time, I can't support additional money. Talk to me in August after we get our report from TASB. And then, when we know what the final cost is going to be, then we can come back and make amendments.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes. So I am married to a teacher. I understand that a teacher's salary is very hard to get by on, especially in families where there is maybe only one wage earner in the family. However, I also need to think about the long-term stewardship of the funds that we need to use for the district. And when I look at the cost of doing additional raises, and I'll remind folks that we've done a 3% raise for our teachers and professionals and a 4% raise for our auxiliary staff, an additional raise would be unsustainable after 2 years. We would run out of fund balance to be able to pay for that. And that is troubling to me. That is very troubling to me. And so, you know, I want to do right by teachers. I feel like we have done something. I can't say that we've done everything that they want, but we have done something. And over the past 2 years, it has been more than most of any of the districts that I know of in San Antonio. And so, you know, I cannot support a 2% raise because I think it's fiscally irresponsible given the costs that we know we need to anticipate coming in and the costs that we don't know about, you know, and wanting to make sure that our salary schedule is equitable. I do think that the TASB study that we want to encourage will help to fix some of the problems that raises don't fix. The things like our really tenured employees who are getting paid at sometimes lower rates or so close that it's negligible to people who are just coming into the district. And that is a very frustrating situation. So those are the things that I want to take this upcoming year to correct and then make the changes that the legislature may require of us, and then in the upcoming year make some additional adjustments and raises from there. So that's where I stand. And I will name that I was not at the budget meeting on Monday because I had a work trip. I was out of town. And that was scheduled after, the budget meeting was scheduled after I'd already made that plan. But I did watch the entire budget meeting over the last couple of days to be able to be caught up.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Ms. Ryan?
I'm a student of school finance, because it's all very fascinating. It's all very complicated. So I have spent, last month, I've literally gone and watched the other board meetings of our other surrounding. Like, it's enough to watch our board meetings, but try go watching everybody else's. Because I want to understand how everybody else does their budgeting process. What their superintendent does, what their board does. And I got to go to TASB SLI this past week. And I got to meet superintendents and their presidents of their boards to talk about how they do their budgeting process. And some of them really have it down because their board understands what the budget means. And what I mean by that is you go watch any ISDs and they brief a 100% budget. We fill every slot. We spend all of our money every single dime. And then the CFO stands there and goes, we all know that's not going to happen. She literally says that on the video. She goes, I know Tim's not spending all of his money and he's not giving you any of it. But so they also brief their real world budget. And she stood there and said, yes, we have to pass a budget that says $58 million deficit, but we all know it's not going to be that much. So, and keep in mind, any ISD just passed $58 million deficit budget. And their fund balance per capita is about 40% less than ours. We have the highest fund balance per student in the region because I pulled everybody's financials. So, and yet everyone else around us is doing more than us. And I don't care what we did in the past because it's a new economy. So if we have the highest fund balance, but we have the lowest pay raise, no one's done lower than 3. People are doing 4 and 5, they're doing 4 and 6, and they're doing 5 and 6. The only ones that are doing 3 are the ones that have a fund balance per capita that is half of ours. So I worry that these numbers may be misconstrued to look like we're heading down a path where we won't have any money. But once I watched the math numbers and learned from all of those other districts, if we pass May 18th, a $24 million deficit was what it said on the slide on May 18th, and everyone was okay with that, and it now says 13. Oh, by the way, this year's dropped from, I think it was 10 million is what we're gonna end the year in deficit, and now we're down to 4. That's literally 25 or $30 million we have uncovered in a month. If this board can't support giving just 4 million of that, not the entire 20 or 30 million, 4 million, just to bring us up to what the other districts who have the same fund balance are doing, then I'm not sure what we're doing with all this money. We're pulling in the taxpayer money. But if we don't keep up and be the #1 district for pay around here, then we're gonna have vacancies. And I wrote down what Dr. Field said at the beginning. Do what's right for Judson's kids. Having one teacher with 21 kids and their paras and their bus drivers, that's what's doing right. That's where I need to put my money because that is where learning happens. That's all I have.
Ms. Stanford?
Okay. One thing that some of the other districts do in their accounting is what Monica alluded to, and that is taking the figure of unfilled positions and adding it back in instead of just leaving it hanging out there. And I'm told it's 3.5 million, so I'll just use that number. I'm not sure how much time that we took to go into that, but if that's last year's number, $3.5 million worth of positions that are not being filled. And we do this every year. And I'm sure we can create a median for that of what's the average, but I'll just use the 3.5 million. That almost offsets the 2% pay raise. So it's only about $500,000 off, not 4 million deficit. So the two offset each other, if that makes sense. The amount of positions we're not going to fill would almost offset a 2% raise. And so that is why I'm supporting a 2% raise.
Ms. Rodriguez.
I have a question for Ms. Stanford. Ms. Stanford, where are you getting the number of $3.5 million of unfilled, or maybe that's a question for Ms. Davis? Okay. And but that's like unfilled positions over the course of the school year, and that is part of where the increased fund balance is coming from. Thank you. Sorry, I did a lot of travel in the last 3 days, so I'm a little. Okay, and so, the 125 unfilled positions, those weren't positions that were maybe vacant all year. Some of them might have been vacant for a short time, or was the 125 what we currently have as far as vacancies go? Okay, got it. Thank you. These numbers that Ms. Stanford is putting out feel a little funny to me. Because I don't think we can predict then that next year we're not going to fill those positions, because these are positions we think we need in the district. They're teachers often, and that's part of the reason sometimes that class sizes are a little larger is we haven't hired those teachers, correct? Or, yeah.
Ma'am. Yes, sorry.
Ms. King.
And so I've attended all the budget meetings this season, and also heard some of the issues among the staff and kind of the things that you guys wanted. And I just want to say that I am an educator, and I know exactly some of the issues that you guys are facing. The staff shortages, the funds. Also the work that is brought home. And so I do understand that. I also understand that as a district, we have to also make sure that we are making sure that we're financially wise regarding the decisions for the district, making sure that the funds are there, that we're being responsible for the future years. And so with listening to everything, all the different sides, all the information presented to me, and also with the TASB study that's going to be taking place this summer, I would like to see what they say, what they have to say in regards to the recommendations regarding salaries and stipends and different things that, as a district, that we can implement. And so with that being said, at this current time, I can't support a 1% increase.
Ms. Stanford.
Have we ordered that TASB report? Has that TASB report been ordered that we are thinking is going to give us results in the summer?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Say it again.
I'll address that. No, I know that we haven't. I've been in touch with Dr. Fields about the TASB study. That is something that we'll be talking about in July. It's been on the radar, but we may have to move into an internal audit function for the specificity of what we're looking for, and we'll discuss that at a July meeting.
Okay.
But the timeline will still be deliverable prior to the next budget discussions that we have.
Because how long does a TASB report take?
The TASB report, I don't want to hazard a guess. I can tell you that we've already been notified that although they have us on the radar, they don't know if they would be able to begin until December. So this
So we're not
isn't,
going to get anything in this summer?
I'm sorry?
We're not going to be getting results this summer, which some people were expecting and thinking we were going to be getting test results or reports from
No,
TASB.
I think I was pretty clear in the last budget meeting that this isn't something that was going to happen overnight, that it was going to happen over time, and they were going to have to put this together over a course of time. I thought I made that clear in one of the budget meetings,
Well,
that this wasn't something that would be, we'd have them come in and the next day we'd have a study for every position throughout the district. That takes time.
Right, some people were, the comments were that they were expecting some results maybe this summer, so I'm just clarifying.
No, ma'am, not at all.
Okay, that,
No, ma'am.
we're not going to.
We were saying we would have the results be prior to the next budget
The
cycle.
next budget cycle.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Well, just to clarify my statement about the unfunded positions, we carry that over year, and I don't know, Dr. Davis, Ms. Davis, if you were able to get a median, how we run it year to year? How many positions, because I know we never fill 100% of our positions. I know that's going to run in an average. Have we had a chance to see that?
That is true, ma'am, but right now, we don't have position control. It's something that we mentioned earlier, so we are giving you our best estimate off of a very long spreadsheet. Our hope is that as we fill that position, we'll be able to transfer all of that information into the Skyward system so that we could be able to give you more accurate numbers.
Okay, so we'll just go with that estimate for now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of input, and I certainly want to weigh in here in a moment, but I do want to make sure that I extend an opportunity to Ms. Eaton. Is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion? No? Okay. So what I really like about this board is that we are all critical thinkers, and it's important that we need to be critical thinkers as we're making decisions. So I'm excited to have this composite of the board as we move forward. But the couple of things that I think are important to note is that we've had retention issues with teachers. We've had morale issues on the campus. It's been harder than ever to be in education. And so last year I was really proud to help lead a 6% raise because it told our teachers we appreciated them. It also sent a huge message that we want them to stay. So I've learned that in this field of education, you can't base a decision on 1 year of data. There has to be multiple years of data to really determine if it's making the impact. We can't always give 3, 4, 5% raises. It really isn't sustainable. And I think, in the heart of hearts, our teachers know that. But because of the unique time that we're in, the challenges that we're facing in filling positions, I like that we're number one. We are one of the highest paid districts right now. And at the end of the day, when our analysis comes back and we're still not able to recruit, retain, then we have to really stop and say, is it about the money? But right now, we haven't had that opportunity really to evaluate that deeply. And as a result, I look at those factors and say, we have to utilize the opportunity. We have a healthy fund balance. It's not 127, 122, so thank you for putting it in a perspective that makes sense, because we do have a three-month operational budget that we need to maintain, so we can't go below 65 million, I believe. So the way you presented it today was very nice in terms of what really our flexibility is. I do believe that we're in position to ride out the storm, and that by adding additional salary through percentage is going to be helpful. I think when teachers return, those that are not paying attention because they left and thought 3% was going to be on the table, that if we can make it more, that's only going to boost morale during a very difficult time. But I also like to say it should be a recruitment mechanism. We should be able to recruit and bring in experienced teachers. Then we have a year, because we will have, I'm not going to even say TASB study, because it's not going to be a TASB study. It will be an internal audit that's really focused on compensation and the specifics that we have. And once we accomplish that, we'll be able to really understand where the disconnect is. I do not believe in my heart the disconnect is in the classroom. I believe there are other facets of our district that we need to understand. So we will do that work this year. I don't think it's a hindrance to add raises now, especially if it's going to retain talent. Now, let me mark my words. If we find out in September everyone left anyway, then son of a gun, we will never be here again, because the data is saying it's not working. So I just wanted to make sure that that perspective was brought forward, because I will be supporting a pay increase. I'll actually be making the motion here in a second, but I just want that to be very clear. There is rational thought, and I think with 85 to 90% of our positions being filled, we know that we're going to get some money coming back. So we have work to do. We have compensations to adjust. The work is going to continue in earnest as we finish this year. So I'll go ahead and make that motion. So I will move that, oh, my apologies.
No, before you made it, one thing you learn at conferences when you go to TASB stuff, it's about consensus and the team type thing. So I very much appreciate hearing everybody come on down the line. Everybody's got, great points. So, a lot of it was about, trying to find middle ground is what they kind of taught us last week. So I know you're going to make a motion, but, listening to what Ms. King said, maybe if we go in the middle and like a 1.5, but like I feel like that's the team, working together to take care of people, and I'm learning to be a very reasonable person and really try and take care of those kids, because I see what Ms. King's saying, and we know we need surveys on this pay. There is a lot of things that need to be fixed in our compensation. So if we can do a little bit now, at a 1.5 maybe, to kind of make everybody happy for the moment, and then get ready to nug down and do the really hard work for the next year, I know I'd be happy with that.
Well, thank you for stealing my thunder, Ms. Ryan. So I will move that we approve a 1.5 salary, raise increase for 23-24.
Second.
Who seconded it? Ms. Stanford. So that's a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion about that before we go to vote? No? Sure, Dr. Fields.
I know initially, when we first started this process, I remember saying 1% and regretted it as soon as it came out. I appreciate that there was pushback, and I appreciate you guys looking at increasing the salaries for the employees in the district, because it is what's best for students. But at some point, we got to get back to a zero budget, and because we can't sustain deficit budgets going forward. And as we do that, I want us to remember that we increase now, because we're going to have to make some hard decisions coming up. And we'll be doing that evaluation of positions throughout the course of this year. And at the end of the year, we'll have to make some decisions. I just want to keep that on the board, because we have to get back to a zero budget. You cannot operate your household or district in a deficit budget. Or you can up until you run out of savings. And we know what that savings is. But we are prepared, if we go up 1%, 1.5%, or 2%, to address that in terms of our payroll and make the best decisions possible going forward. So we appreciate you guys doing that.
I appreciate that as well. And you're right, the uniqueness of us having a fund balance to kind of leverage this year. And to your point, Dr. Fields, one more year of making sure that we're positioned at the top. And if it's not yielding the results, our turnover is still exceptionally high, then we know it's not money. So, but we can't really know that until we go forward. And like I said, I do value experienced teachers staying in the classroom. And I do feel our students need our teachers and all of us more than ever. So if this is going to set that narrative that we care and that we want you to stay, then I'm going to go ahead and follow through with this motion. So the motion on the floor is for a 1.5 raise for the teachers, librarians, nursing, and counseling pay grade, as well as auxiliary. That's correct?
Yes.
Yes. So 1.5, and just for the record, that would be a roughly a $3 million, cost for that. It wouldn't be 4 because it's not 2%.
Correct.
So it would be roughly a $3 million expense. So if we could vote, the voting is on. Okay, the motion passes. 1.5. So as I mentioned earlier, we have more amendments to discuss, and we're going to go ahead and go through them. Ms. Stanford, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Fields, for saying that you want to take a hard look at the budget, because I'm sure there are many inefficiencies and things that we can correct through the next year. And I'm happy to maybe be on a committee, finance committee, to help take a really hard look at, short of cutting jobs, we could cut other things that would make our budget more efficient, and I think I'd be happy to see that commitment going forward through the next year. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I guess, just to echo that, Dr. Fields, we're not going to leave you. Our responsibility is the future of this district, and we have a good board that's going to be engaged in this process. So in terms of additional amendments, I do want to now talk a little bit about the days, and then we have a couple of other things to talk about. So the last that we heard on the days is that your recommendation was to make the investment in increasing days to 226.
Correct.
And that still stands?
Definitely. What we were trying to say is that we were at a number of days in terms of 300 and something employees at the central office level and principals, and cut back to 220. I asked Dr. Gosh to go through and do an assessment, because some of the things that came up was, well, what do other districts do? How many days do their central office staff work? And it became very interesting as the information came back in. So, Dr. Gosh, if you could go through what you found in the surrounding districts in terms of how their central office staff work throughout the school year.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to do so. We have the ability and access to some numbers provided by TASB. So TASB does a report every year where they ask districts to provide the information on certain general operating procedures. So it is based on the districts volunteering to provide the information to TASB. So everyone that is in our general area that did add to the TASB information, we have brought for you today so that you could kind of see a comparison. So what I'm sharing with you here, we're going to start out with the accounts payable, because this is like the general rule as far as their, I guess, the business office and the way that works. And so these are all of the districts that reported in the general area here in San Antonio. And you can see there, it lists the total enrollment of the school districts and then the number of duty days that is actually covered. And this information came from TASB, and we've highlighted Judson there at 220, which is also there with Navarro ISD and Poth ISD.
Before you go on, this is one list. So first you'd have the first side, then the second side before you get to Judson at the bottom.
Correct.
And the 220 days accounts for the central office staff who work 220 days. And that's comparable to Navarro and Poth with student populations of 2,900. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. So, and one great thing is that we have other information to share with you in terms of positions for the district. And so I just wanted to briefly show you, we pulled these down as well. So when you look at the Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, you can see the other areas and the other districts in the area and the number of days that those individuals work. And then again, Judson, the Assistant Superintendent of Operations, which does vary depending on, some are doing 240, some are doing variations of that based on the role that they have. So they are different with each one. We also have information for the Chief Financial Officer as well as the Assistant Superintendent of HR. And again, you can see Judson is in the lower end of that as well.
Dr. Gosh, could you stop for a minute and go back?
Absolutely.
So I wanted to make the comparison when we talked about central office staff. When I originally brought this in, there was a lot of pushback in terms of why is the cabinet asking for more days? As you can see throughout this entire presentation, people at the cabinet level in other districts serve more days. And there's a reason for that, because they're in charge of those areas. So this wasn't something foreign. This is what's typically done throughout all independent school districts throughout the state of Texas. Yes, ma'am, keep going.
Absolutely. The Assistant Superintendent of Technology, you can see the number of days that are listed there as well, and Judson still being at 220. We did not eliminate, just so that you're aware, we did not remove anybody, so these are all of the districts in the area that report on these particular categories. So like on some of the other ones, you may have noticed that Navarro ISD is not here, or Poth ISD, or Marion, and some of those, they don't necessarily have that particular position, so they might not be reporting on it. So these are all the districts that have the position and are reporting on it. So I do want to make that clarification. Chief Communications Officer, again, you can see we are at 220 and the surrounding districts are at 226 and above. Deputy Superintendent level, these are the districts that currently have a Deputy Superintendent that are reporting in the general area and the number of days that they are on site, with Alamo Heights being the highest. And then we get into some of the director positions. So there were comparable director positions that we have in the district that are also shown here, since we were talking about, more positions aside from the ones that are basically the cabinet level positions. So the director of bilingual, we also have information on director of CTE. The only districts that are comparable to us in that particular area is Schertz-Cibolo ISD, director of child nutrition. We fall there at the 220. And then there's 3 other districts that fall below that, being a fraction of the size of Judson in that particular area. And then lastly, a director of curriculum. And you can see the number of days there. And again, you can see we are down at 220 with the other districts being 226 and above. So in addition to that, in terms of the days, one of the things that we did talk about, and one of the questions I know that was asked, that the board asked, is in terms of the non-duty days that we were giving to folks to make up the difference between the 220 and the 226 days or the 229 days that might be on the calendar, the question was how many of those days were on the table and what did that look like and when were people taking those? So we pulled some reports out of Skyward for you to share. So I pulled the 2021-2022 year, and I want to explain a little bit about what you see here. So our non-duty days run through November of each year. So staff members essentially have the full calendar year from July 1 all the way through the November of the following year to use their non-duty days. Otherwise, they lose those days. So in looking at all of the employees in the district that receive non-duty days, there's a total of 350 employees in the district that had non-duty days in the 2021-2022 school year. By November 30th of 2022, this last year, only 63 of the 350 individuals had actually taken and used their non-duty days. There were 12 employees who still had 5 or fewer days that they could have taken. There were 81 employees that had anywhere from 5 days to 10 days that they could have taken. And then there were 194 employees that had all 11 days that were provided to them in that year, and in some cases they had more. And the reason that there are more is there are some positions, like your 204, so there are other positions that have additional days aside from just the 220. And I just pulled everyone that had non-duty days. In the month of November alone, we had 620 days taken. So between November 1st and November 30th, people were trying to use up as many days as they could. We actually had 620 absences in that month of just non-duty days. So that's a lot of days to be out. So just to kind of give perspective on that. I also then ran for the school year that we're currently in. One of the things when we saw those numbers last year, we encouraged everyone, please use your non-duty days first because you will lose those days, and your local days and your state days, those roll over each year and you can accrue those over time. So we asked people to begin to use them. And in many cases, people are using their non-duty days for doctor's appointments, field trips, and other things that they need to use for just personal leave. They're using their non-duty days for that. This report was run as of today to show you how many non-duty days still remain for our employees. So 106 of our employees have used up all of their non-duty days out of the 350 folks that have the non-duty day allowances. 58 of those have less than 5 remaining. 132 employees have 5 to 10 days remaining. And there are 54 employees that have 11 or more days remaining for this school year. Those individuals would have through November 30th of 2023 to utilize the days that are remaining here.
So again, this is just a recommendation. We were at 226, went to 228, and then we're put back at 220. We're making a recommendation for 226. We're prepared to proceed however the board would vote.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fields. As soon as this screen comes up, we'll take speakers. Ms. Ryan?
My comment is more or less about the what, more about the how. You know, we're 8 days before contracts start, you know, before this takes effect. And, you know, I've had 30 plus of these 220 employees reach out, and it's pretty split down the middle. There are a lot of workaholics in this district who said, yep, I'm working it, pay me for it. Awesome. But then the other half, and I would say it was split pretty well in half, is, you know, part of this new post-COVID work-life balance where people have really committed to not being workaholics. And that's probably, about, you know, I think at about the halfway mark. And there are people who have family vacations planned in July and planned at certain times and came to school districts, so they had a lot of flexibility. So I think a plan like this, if it had been started months and months ago and very well socialized and talked to with all the departments and everybody kind of knew what was coming, it may have been a little better received, I think, from some of the staff. It's the fact that we're really close to July 1st and this is kind of being sprung on them without them talking about it. So when we're making, you know, kind of some major changes, especially involve work-life balance, let's get a little more lead time on things so that people can kind of get used to the idea and we can at least make them feel like they have a voice. I know not everybody gets a vote in the audience, but at least, you know, let them tell you what it means to them to have the vacation days or not have the vacation days. So that's more of just a process thought, not this is what it is at this point.
So one of the things that we did before, when we found out that there was some interest in, well, is it just cabinet level or should it be everybody? And I went back to the cabinet and said, go back to the people that you supervise, give me feedback. And we did that for 2 days and got in touch with people. It was overwhelmingly the feedback that I received from the people that you see around the dais this evening. And I'd be more than happy for them to let me know what their feedback was in the areas that they're responsible for, but that the people wanted to go to 226. Now, I know that we'll never have 100% consensus on anything that we put out, but the majority of the individuals wanted to be compensated or go back to the days that they were. And you can see we are the aberration across the entire region. Everybody is at 226 mostly or up. So it's not like we're asking for something unreasonable. I even talked to the cabinet and they said, if we go to 226, we would go to 226. We just all want to be back at the level that we were at. So I would open it up to even any cabinet members that had feedback on that based on
Dr.
what.
Fields,
Yes, ma'am.
we had a long conversation with campus principals, and if I get any of this wrong, I want you guys to help me. It feels like the days are long gone when school shut down after the students left, and we started again in August, right? So when you think about the fact that teachers have until July 2nd to resign, there's a hard push at around that July 2nd date to then start hiring. So we have to have people on staff to be able to hire. And at the campus level, the only person that's there during that time is the campus principal. So if you wanted to take a vacation, let's say the week before July 4th, right? And you come back and find out that you had 6 or 7 teachers resign, you missed a week and a half of an opportunity to capture staff. And I think that was really the biggest concern. And then we had lots of conversations about accountability. Used to be accountability came back the second kids were stepped off the campus. It's not that way anymore. We're not even talking about getting accountability results until August and September. There's a lot of planning that has to happen during that time in between that space. It's hard.
Well, Dr. Saunders, with a 1.5 additional pay raise, we'll have teachers come back, I hope. That's the hope. Ms. Ryan, you had a quick comment?
Oh, no, other than I know everybody on the board is really looking forward to the TASB study from not just a pay standpoint, but from a staffing standpoint. And because I pulled a couple of duty positions, and it's very inconsistent across districts where one department works 226, another certain kinds of specialties. So I'm looking forward to making sure TASB gets laser focused on days in what everybody else around us is doing line by line. And then in conjunction with that pay, I think that'll be really useful information to just really make sure we are standardized, across San Antonio. So I think those, whenever we do get those reports, fall, winter, that'll be helpful when we look at days across the board for next year's plan.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Stanford, I was going to say something first, so I'll yield it to you in a second. Well, then go right ahead.
This is just a comment about, if there's a campus that loses 7 teachers, I just want to say I'll take a hard look at that campus. That's all.
I think you would be taking a hard look at the United States of America.
Well, I'm just talking about our district.
I know, I'm just
But
saying
it's
that is,
common.
that is the space we are in now.
That's minimal.
There
We've
are
had it.
people leaving not only Judson ISD, there are people leaving the profession across the nation, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying things are different. Things feel very different now. 4 years ago, if you had 2 or 3 people leaving your campus, that was a gut punch for a campus principal. That was, let me take a hard look at me as a leader and what can I do to fix this? We're in a different state now. We're in a different situation. For some teachers, right, they're able to leave the profession, and with the skills that they've acquired, they're able to go into another capacity in the business world and earn twice as much as what we can even offer them with the 4.5% pay raise. It feels like it's crunch time now all the time. And I think that's the sentiment we're getting. It's very, very hard to, especially when we talk about social emotional all the time, right? As a campus principal, you're responsible for everyone. You're responsible for the kids. You're responsible for their family. You're responsible for your teachers. It is very difficult to ever turn your phone off. Because if a teacher needs you, if they're in crisis, if they need support, if they need assistance, you're on. You might have put in your vacation day, but guess what? You're not going to ignore the phone call.
And thank you. That's a great segue where I was going to pick up. In terms of the decision to go to 226, I can support that. I think it is imperative that we have campus leadership early. I also understand administration, but my only reservation would be the other positions, because some of the feedback that I've heard is that they didn't sign up for 226. They're content with that life-work balance. So I know that we are arbitrarily increasing all days that were decreased, but there are some employees that do not want to be at 226. I'm not saying it's principals, APs, or I think all of them, they want to be, cabinet. But why would we not be able to offer employees who opt in for 220 that option? Because if they don't want to work, it's almost like if you don't want to be here, are you going to be effective, right? And if it's just those days, then let them be home for 6 days. But I'm just putting it out there because we can be the district that cares about our employees and tries to work with them, because if we're not paying them for 6 days, guess what? We're 6 days we're saving. So give me some perspective there, Dr.
The reason why I smiled is there's so many things I want to say when you said, if you don't want to be here, are you going to be effective? I can assure you that there's some days people show up and they don't want to be here, but they're still effective. I would say, again, for us to be able to, first, once we set a time for personnel to be here, we have to set those days. And we don't allow people to come into the district and say, I know that this is a 226 position, but I only want to work 220 days. This is what the position calls for. Are you going to work that, or are you going to accept it or not? And it needs to be consistent. One of the other things that we didn't talk about, but the police, we just changed them back from the 240 to the 230. Consensus-wise, they came back and collectively said they wanted to go to 230. What we didn't want is for half the police to be here 240 and half the police to be here 230. We have to have consensus in our compensation plan and in the number of days that we have for positions. I would tell you that again, the feedback that I received from the cabinet was that overwhelmingly they wanted to go to 226, most. Now, I'm sure there's some out there that do not.
Well, And to expedite the conversation, I respect and understand that. What I would ask then is to consider, like we did with the police, in 240 to 230, that as we go through this year, that we evaluate and give employees the opportunity to get consensus on days. So if you talk to a certain pay grade and they really want to work 220 or even 223, the fact that non-duty days were being utilized tell me that they wanted to be off and they picked particular days to do so. So as we try to be more humanistic about caring about our employees, I think that is one very easy thing to do. And I would implore that we think about our employees. So I will say that I support this measure. We're going to move forward with it. But it's just a matter of take a look at those employees and those pay grades that may not want, just like you did with the police department, and see if there's some adjustments that you can bring back in those particular areas.
Understood. Yes, sir.
I'll yield the floor. I think I have Ms. Rodriguez next.
Yes, so I'm supportive of this because this is the schedule that these workers were on before, and that was taken away from them. And then.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and so this is a return to what the prior duty days were for these employees. The one question I do have, and I've received no outreach about this, like nobody has contacted me about this particular issue. But my question is, if this isn't going to interfere with people's pre-scheduled vacations, right? Like, we're not going to come back and say, no, you can't take that week off this summer to go.
Not at all. It starts the 1st of July, but you're really working the same days you always were. It's just the non-duty days.
Right.
To Mr. Macias's defense, what it is the amount of days then that you receive back that we asked you to take off that you're not compensated for, that takes you back down to the 220 days.
Okay.
But oftentimes, to Dr. Saunders' point, even when you're in Hawaii, if the phone rings and something's going on, you're on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Eaton.
Ms. Rodriguez just mentioned the point that I wanted to make, but I want to make it again. These days were taken from these employees without any prior knowledge, information being given, anything. And just like, employees showed up and they're asking for a pay raise, I understand that. I also understand getting my check and finding out that all of a sudden I'm short 6 days just because the board wasn't even informed of it. So that's my 2 cents on that. They deserve to have their days given back.
Ms. Canoyer.
I just want us to be real careful about, as Dr. Fields refers to it, onesie-twosying things. If Dr. Duhart-Toppin is here for the 226 days, but her secretary's not, because she only wanted to work 220, that can't happen. So we've just got to be real careful about categories and giving exemptions and however you want to call it. So this is the nature of the work.
Is there any other questions or comments? So, Dr. Fields, I'll just ask again, will you be talking with different pay grades regarding that as we go forward so that we can see about what that might look like? Because obviously, as Ms. Canoyer's point is, no, it makes no sense. But I don't know. I've not examined and asked every employee. That's your job, not mine, to go and interview every employee. You find out what the deal is. Are there sectors of our employees that do not want 226 and prefer to have more time off? But that's what you need to find out.
I can let you know now there are sectors of our employees that don't want 226, that would rather have more time off. But consensus-wise, there are more that I've been informed of by the people around the dais that would prefer to have the 226. I can tell you that not only will we be looking into this number of days as we move forward, but we're going to take a long, hard look at all of our positions throughout the district, because we have some very hard decisions that we need to make at the end of this year. in terms of the positions.
And that's why I'm okay with supporting this, because we
Yes, sir.
still have a lot of work to do. But anyhow, then, with no further questions, we'll move forward with this particular amendment. So I'll go ahead and make that motion that we approve amendments made to the approved 23-24 compensation plan. This is for the amendments to the days.
This would be an
Correct.
amendment.
Just want to make
Yes, sir.
Ms. Eaton seconded it.
I'm going to ask a clarifying question. We've only discussed the days, but the motion you're making is to approve the entire slate of amendments that have been proposed.
No, just the days. We're going amendment to amendment. We did the pay raise. We're doing the
I'm a little
days.
confused because I don't have the amendments in front of me to be able to know which one is which, or as we're discussing them.
Those are the cost amendments, ma'am.
Okay.
And now there are other changes to the compensation plan that,
Okay.
yes, please put it up, please. Thank you
Got it.
so much.
So we're going one by one on that list
Just
that was
on the
presented
ones
on
that are
Tuesday.
cost, right.
Okay, got it. It's in a paper I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
It's right up here. The title of the slide is Cost for the Amendments to School Year 23-24 Comp Plan. These were the proposed amendments that were discussed on Tuesday's budget workshop, which included the 220 days to 226 days, the librarian master stipend to ensure that every librarian is receiving the stipend, the social workers additional days, the guidance SEL coordinator additional days, what Dr. Fields just shared, taking our police officers from 240, which they currently are at, to 230 days. And
Which would be a decrease, correct?
it would be a decrease because they're currently in the approved comp plan at 240 days. As a consensus, we're bringing it back to 230 days. It'd be a decrease of about $75,000. And then the JECA counselor, I apologize, it's not listed separately, but the proposal for the JECA counselor at about a rate of about $70,000.
70?
Yes, ma'am.
So those are all in the amendment with this motion,
Right.
because that's the comp plan
Because if we
amendments.
could talk about any of these other ones, then we should vote on it all at once, as opposed to.
Sure, I know that we have a motion and a second on the floor, but we can yield if there's any other discussion. If not, let's go ahead and proceed and vote, please. Okay, it's up. Okay, the motion carries. All right, and so I have one more, and mind you, this is my personal amendment that I'm asking as a board member to discuss, that's related to the comp plan, and then, of course, afterwards, just know that any other board member can make a motion or amendment for anything. But my discussion is in regards to the lead custodial staff. And I know that last year, we heard from lead custodial staff about the inequity, where they were making 50 cents more than an entry level, and we haven't made the adjustment. I already know last year we committed to making that adjustment, and 15 months later, we haven't yet made those adjustments. So it's taken time. I know we're committed to doing that, and I think the board collectively is committed to making those adjustments. We've talked about it. But what I'd like to do, just because of the personal appeal by Ms. Molina making several overtures to our board about the inequity, that we take action almost as a symbolic gesture to say we're committed. So we're going to start, I'm going to make a motion for the lead custodial adjustment today. It's only going to be minimal, but it's a start. And again, it's symbolic because out of respect to her continued presence, along with her coworkers. I mean, they've been more lead custodial staff. So essentially, I want to acknowledge that because I can tell you the worst thing an employee can feel is ignored. And after 15 months and maybe 5 times at Citizens to be Heard, you start to feel ignored. So my personal thing is that I want to make a symbolic gesture to support an increase. So That's why I put it on the floor. I mean, obviously, let's discuss before I make the motion, or I can make the motion and we can discuss that. But bottom line, I just wanted to say that. So let me just make the motion. We'll get a second, and then we'll discuss it. That would
Can we
vote.
discuss it before a motion is made, sir?
Either way, we can do it, sure. If you have a comment now, Ms. Rodriguez.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a little confused about why this was not discussed in the budget meeting on Tuesday with all the other amendments, because now I deeply appreciate the advocacy, and I want to do right by people, but I don't feel prepared to understand the financial impact of anything that you would be proposing that's not already on here. And I don't think the administration is prepared to be able to speak to that unless you've spoken to them separately and asked them to be prepared to do that.
No, but be very clear, Ms. Rodriguez. We have the ability to make that motion, and administration get the feedback, so I don't have to wait or have budget discussion on it. I can discuss it here today.
I understand, but why didn't you ask that to be on the budget meeting on Tuesday?
Because I just thought about it yesterday. So bottom line, I'm thinking about it now. We're talking about it now, and administration, give me some feedback when I make the proposal. So bottom line is, we know there's a deficiency. We know that we're getting 50 cents more over entry-level employees. I'd like to propose a modest $1 increase for lead custodians at this point, so they're making $1 more than entry-level. I know that it's not going to rock the boat. It's only $1, but combine that with everything. I think we can make the adjustment. I don't know what the rough math is, but it can't be millions of dollars. So $1 increase for lead custodians across the district.
How many do we have?
I would imagine we have 30. Because we have,
Well,
we have elementary and we have
And
middle
all of
school
the buildings.
and high school.
And the buildings.
Okay. So I just know that the work that our custodial staff do in cleaning the buildings up for our students, I mean, it's pretty, so again, I know it's unorthodox. I know that we typically would wait for a study, and we're still waiting for that study, but because literally we've been waiting for a while, it's just a symbolic gesture. So I'm asking my colleagues a little grace in trying to move forward with something like this. Dr. Fields, if you have something you'd like to add.
Only that it pains me to say it this way. I consider, I mean, the people that you're talking about, I know personally and are friends. But I also know of other positions who have come in my office and made cases to say the same. And we've been consistent in that we need to look into it before we make changes in any area. I stand ready and willing for whatever the board votes on. I would just say that it's inconsistent, and sometimes inconsistency breeds favoritism. And this would be one of those situations where we haven't looked at everybody. But I can assure you, I've had principals come in and threaten to leave and make the same concerns known, that principals coming in right now are making as much as they do or more. And the same thing for teachers. So to pick one particular group at this point, as much as I would love to say yes, because I know in terms of the financial impact, we could do things to try and make that happen. It would be inconsistent with what we've done with everybody else. And it may open ourselves up to grievances from other positions that aren't given the same ability.
I would say the grievance part, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that would be the case, because right now the message I'm trying to send is that we hear our employees. And the fact that we've taken so long to get from this point, and we really haven't even begun to study, I mean, we could be losing employees who've given up on us. So I really don't feel in my heart that by doing this for lead custodians that we're setting we're going to be burning things down. I just don't feel that yet. Now, granted, I don't hear from every employee. If you've heard from principals and everyone else, they've not come to citizens to be heard. And mind you, every employee, you can come talk to the board. It's not illegal, it's not inappropriate. Come and talk to us. Now, we can only listen to you. So let's be clear, we can't make a management decision, but we can listen. And so that perspective, if we've not hit the gas to try to get this done, and we're still here. I know I see AFT and I see Ms. Molina. They've come here continuously asking for us to adjust this. I'm willing to say symbolically, this is a step and a commitment from this board to ensure we adjust compensation. That's all. And again, I'm saying lead custodians because they you know, that separation between entry level and lead is just too close. So if my colleagues do not agree with me, I'll respect that vote. We'll move forward. And then, of course, I will ensure that when we talk about this next month, that we have a clear path for our internal auditor to start this work because it's delayed. And
Yes,
I feel that we need to get it done.
I can tell you, I've checked in, I think we have about 30, 32 lead custodians throughout the district. We stand ready to do whatever the board feels is the best way to move on. I said what I had to say about it, but I mean, we're going to be happy that, you know, people in the district are being compensated according to.
And that we're going to make adjustments to make sure they're compensated accordingly.
Yes, sir.
And that's really the whole commitment. Ms. Ryan?
It's more of a anecdotal comment because I kind of knew you were gonna talk about this, so I spent about 10 minutes is all it took me on the computer today to go look up the TASB recommendations on a custodian versus a lead elementary and what the pay differentials are supposed to be. You know, what they are in the market, you know, between a custodian and a lead should be a $1 difference, you know, regular. On midpoint should be 166. And then I pulled up ours. Oh wait, we're only 50 cents different. And I looked up Shirts Cibolo and they're within TASB recommendations. And so I know it's a little frustrating for me that we've had this data for 16 months and they've been asking for 3 years, and we didn't fix it last year and we didn't fix it this year. And I know there's no time to fix it this year. I know that. But it took more time to put together how many days the deputy superintendents were working at all the other districts than it did for me to put this together for our custodians. So we haven't fixed it in 3 years. I know we're gonna do another survey, but we've got some new people on the board and we can't take another data set and not do something with it because I know the IT scale is messed up and I know the police scale is messed up and every scale is messed up. So, yes, but again, it doesn't take that much time to fix some of this. And I wish I had been on the board before it because I probably would have had these numbers in February 2 years ago or February this year. But that's all water under the bridge. I got here when I got here type thing. But, you know, just know I'm committed to find the numbers. And I think the rest of the board and the staff is too. And it can't be an empty promise this year.
Well, and I will say last year it did fail. I tried to adjust a comp plan last year for the record, and it didn't make it through. So again, this is a vote. Again, we all have the ability, and I've shared with my colleagues, you bring your concerns up, we talk about them. So for the sake of discussion, so we can move this along, I think we've had adequate discussion on this. So I'm going to motion that we move that we pay lead custodians $1 more in the compensation plan for 23-24.
Can I ask a clarification? Are you saying $1 more an hour than who?
$1 more an hour than,
What they're currently making?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they currently make 50 cents an hour over the entry level.
Yes.
So you're saying that it would then be $1.50. I'm just making sure I understand what I'm voting for.
That they would have $1.50 more, yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, so now we can vote. All right, if you want to go ahead and vote, please. Okay, the motion carries. I think if we could take breaks, we would, but we got to keep going. So I think we talked about days, raises, lead custodian. So we're going to now go to letter B, which is going to be the entire comp plan. I have no more questions about.
That's letter A.
Letter A? I thought we had just voted on A. So, yeah, letter B. So I move that we approve the proposed budget for 24 fiscal year.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I was waiting for a second. I'm thinking nobody wants to approve the budget. Okay, second. So let's go ahead and vote if there are no questions, so we can proceed.
I think he should do it. You can't do it.
So I'm going to confirm, but just know Ms. Eaton's vote is abstain. So if it says no, that's not what it means. It's abstain. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. Okay, so the motion carries. Letter C, discussion and possible action regarding approval of submittals for request for proposal 22-44 two-way radio communication system. Dr. Fields?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Fields?
This was, the two-way radio communication system was the radio communications that the police department were requesting. We were able to go through the RFP process, and in doing so, the company that was favored by our police department gave a 50% discount in their proposal. And so that's the one that won out. That was the one that the police wanted, so we're asking that this be approved. And this is part of the 2022 bond.
Yes, sir. It actually covers for the 2022 bond, but it is more than just the police radios. So yes, it includes the P25 that are the police grade radios for that, but it also will replace all of the radios for a standard mode of communication across the district. So it will upgrade all of the radios across the district to
Correct.
be
Yes,
digital radios, not analog radios. So all of the campuses will receive new radios, transportation, and it also includes the equipment for the dispatch systems that are needed for that. So it is a complete redesign of all radios across the district.
Ms. Ryan?
So these are the ones we talked about that in that void in the middle of Veterans Memorial High School, concrete jungle, that will now, in theory, work in the middle of there, right?
Yes, ma'am. In
Okay.
theory, they are supposed to work. We do know that there are certain areas in the district that will need some. Kirby is one of those areas, unfortunately, that would need some additional, but that doesn't have anything to do with the radios as much as it has to do with the services. It's kind of like cell service in some areas. You go into certain areas of the building and the cell service doesn't work. And so we do run into that at some of our campuses. And so when that happens, what we want to do is provide the additional equipment, and it would include all of that, and that would be part of the services that would be purchased later. This is just the equipment.
Okay. And all of our little municipalities, all of our little cities, they've all switched over to the P25s now too? 'Cause I know SAPD did, the city of San Antonio did, but all of them, Kirby, UC, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so it should be all very interoperable.
Yes.
And everybody able to talk.
The radios will work with all of the different frequencies, so the municipalities, they vary on which frequency they use. And so the P25 radios, that was part of the requirements, that the ones that we were given would communicate with all of those. That way we could select the services that worked best and most cost effectively for the district and met the needs of our department.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so we'll go ahead and proceed to vote.
I move we approve the.
Thank you, Ms. Knapp.
The submittals for request for proposal 2444 two-way radio communication system.
Second.
All right, now we have a proper motion and a second. Thank you again, Mr. Knapp. Okay. Ms. Stanford? All right, that motion carries. Next item is letter D, discussion and possible action regarding approval of technology purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Fields?
Yes, sir. I want to say that last year, this is something that was done, and our current policy reads that purchases over $50,000 need to be brought to the board. In all of these departments that you're going to see come up one by one, there are routine purchases that are going to amount to $50,000 and more just on contracts or frequently purchased items. Rather than having to come back on every over $50,000, we're trying to get those approved for a certain amount and then labeling what those areas are right now and bringing them to the board. So that's what you'll see all the way through. The first one up will be technology. I believe their amount is 6.5 million.
It's actually 6.4 is what is
I
requested.
apologize, down from last year.
Down from last year, yes, sir.
6.4 million. We did the same thing last year in terms of approving, and there's a list of those areas that will be contracted out that are over 50,000. So we're asking that that plan be approved, and then the same with the others as we move through.
I can tell you last year I was a little apprehensive, and thank you, Dr. Gosh, for going through that, and Dr. Fields in
Yes, sir.
terms of explaining what the premise is behind this. So, I mean, we can't talk individually the items after this, but they're all very similar, as you
Yes, sir.
said.
All of
In
them.
terms of we're just taking proactive steps to approve 50,000 plus. So for this particular item, are there any questions? Ms. Ryan?
I don't think you responded to this question, or if you did, I lost a page out of my papers. Is some of this billable to bond? Because some of these things were in the bond scope, so anything we can bill to bond that is within, that 84 million of technology would be awesome.
Correct. And actually, last year when we did this item, the areas, and I think the areas that you were probably specifically looking at have to do with some of the cabling and the switches and some of that. So yes, that is in the bond.
Correct.
However, we do have cabling technicians on our own staff, and at times we may need to purchase. So the amount of dollars that have been designated right there for those two particular line items were decreased significantly from last year due to the bond projects. Now, the reasons that they are still in here is that we do cabling projects across the district, and we may need, a replacement or something like that that is unrelated to the specificity of the bond projects.
Okay.
So the bond projects were very specific to the network operations centers and to the new middle school, and to actually rewiring and reconstructing a lot of the campuses that are pre-existing. So these are actually supplies. For example, if we needed to add some additional cabling here in this room, that would help to cover the cost of those. So most of that is for supplies in those areas.
Okay, all right, sounds good. I just want to make sure we can attribute as much to bond money as we can.
Are there any other questions? Then I move that we approve the technology purchases over 50,000 for the 23-24 school year. Motion carries. Letter E, discussion and possible action regarding approval of office supplies, furniture purchases over 50,000 for the 23-24 school year. Dr. Fields?
Again, same concept as technology. The difference here would be that if you have a commodity that in the aggregate, it's going to be over 50,000, then that's something else that needs to be brought to the board. So although this is office furniture, and there may not be, like under office equipment, it says 31,000. In the aggregate, these are like commodity codes, so we would have to bring that back as well. So that's why we're asking for the same thing.
Do you have any questions? Ms. Stanford?
Just for the public's information, I'm looking at the breakdown. Is it mostly furniture? Because I'm seeing,
So we excluded the furniture this year. Last year, it was approved with furniture. We believe that moving forward, we would like to bring furniture because it'll probably exceed 50K, and those won't be as routine. So we made that change, and we uploaded the resubmittal.
okay, because what I'm seeing is actually supplies, copy paper, office supplies, some office equipment, various kinds of paper, just for clarification, not furniture. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, then I go ahead and I move. Oh, yes, Ms. Kenora, go ahead.
I just want to clarify for the public that this board book, with the exception of anything discussed in closed session, is available online for everyone to see. So you can open it up on your phone and follow along, and we don't have to share all that information and take time from our meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Kenora. I move that we approve office supplies/furniture purchases over 50,000 for the 23-24 year. I was going to do a roll call, but thank you for doing that, so we can vote. Go ahead.
Has it been seconded?
Second.
I'll second it.
Good call, Ms. Rodriguez. Okay, the motion carries. Letter F, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the maintenance department purchases over 50,000 for 23-24.
Same concept, sir. Last year it was 4.3 million. This year it's 4.6. And as you can see, a list of those different areas that, for custodians, the use of the Hilliard products and the amounts next to each one, that would all amount over the 50,000 that we're asking to just go ahead and be approved of now.
Are there any questions regarding this item? Okay. I move that we approve the maintenance department purchases over 50,000 for the 23-24 fiscal year.
Second.
Okay, please vote. Motion carries. Letter G, discussion and possible action regarding approval of transportation purchases over 50,000 for the 23-24 school year.
Once again, sir, this would be for fuel, repairs, parts, supplies over in the transportation department as well, totaling 1.8 million.
1.9.
I'm sorry, ma'am? 1.9.
Ms. Eaton?
Thank you. Dr. Fields, does this include any of the buses?
No, ma'am. Any one-time purchase over 50,000, we would come back to the board. This is just for contractual services and things that we know are going to add up to over 50,000 over the course of the year. But if we were to make a one-time purchase for a new bus that's 100,000, we would bring that back to the board for approval. This is just for the routine things that we know we're going to have.
Okay, because I know we talked, about getting
Yes, ma'am.
some new buses.
Right,
Okay.
with the 22 bond. I think it was about 3 million in there.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions? Then I move that we approve the transportation purchases over 50,000 for the 23-24 fiscal year.
Second.
Please vote. Okay, the motion carries. Letter H, discussion and possible action regarding child nutrition purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 year.
Once again, sir, contract maintenance repairs, miscellaneous contract services, general supplies totaling approximately 1.35 million for the child nutrition department.
Any discussion? No? Then I move that we approve child nutrition purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year. Please vote. All right, motion carries. Letter I, discussion and possible action regarding special education purchases / services over $50,000 for 23-24.
Yes, sir. This is mostly contracted services such as speech specialists, occupational therapy, visual impairment services, all of these things that we contract with throughout the instructional year for approximate cost of $4.3 million. We're asking for the same thing.
Are there any questions? Ms. Ryan?
Some of these dollar amounts went up quite a bit. Is this from the cost of the service providers, or are we getting a lot more kids into the program?
I believe I'm going to let Dr. Toppin speak to exactly why.
We have a significant increase in the number of special populations
Okay.
that we are servicing in Judson right now. And a lot of these individuals that we're contracting with are making more money in the private sector. So we cannot hire them because we cannot come close to a six-figure salary for occupational therapists, speech therapists. So they are going to the private sector. So we are working with different agencies in order to meet the needs of our students.
So it's a combination of both.
A combination. Okay, well, good. No, more getting kids through the pipeline that need to be evaluated and in the
Yes, ma'am.
program is a great thing.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
Thumbs up for me.
Any other questions? Then I move that we approve special education purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year. Please vote. Motion carries. Letter J, discussion and possible action regarding approval of athletic purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year.
This is for an approximate total of $1,060,000, and it incorporates student insurance, gym floor, refinishing, transportation, and paying of officials. And again, that total would be about $1,060,000 for athletics.
Are there any questions? Then I move that we approve the athletic purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
Please vote. Motion carries. Letter K, discussion and possible action regarding approval of fine arts purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year.
This is for an approximate total of $1.239 million, and this would be for general supplies, instruments, rentals, contracted services for color guard, clinician specialists, and competition, and some of their fees as well. So we're asking for $1.239 million. Anything over that amount, we would bring back, as we would with any of these.
Any questions? Then I move that we approve the fine arts purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
Please vote. Motion carries. Letter L, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the federal programs and grants purchases over $50,000 for the 23-24 school year.
A lot of this falls under professional development with Region 20, also contracting coaches to come in, service contracts, and social and emotional learning with mental health contracts and mindful practice. So all of these would come out of that particular department for a total of 1.5 million.
Any comments, questions? I move that we approve federal programs and grants purchases over $50,000 for 23-24 school year. Motion carries. Looks like we have concluded our action items, so we have discussion reports, but we do have our attorneys on the premises. They haven't texted me that they're here, but I feel that they're here. And- Yeah, and we're being charged for that. So what I'd like to do is go into closed session at this point, and I'll go ahead and read the agenda items for closed session. We will be going in to discuss personnel and personnel report, updates including new hires, resignations, and appointments. Letter B, we will also be pursuant to the Government Code Section 551071, attorney consultation regarding legal issues related to the possible revisions of board policy regarding visitor access to district campuses. And in letter C, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551-074, consider and discuss board member duties, roles, and responsibilities. The board will now adjourn into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is now, what time is it? 8:17. The board will now reconvene in open session. The time is now 9:20. No final action, decision, or vote was taken while the board was in closed session. So we do have one item in closed session to vote for, so can I get a motion?
I move that we accept the personnel report as discussed in closed session.
Second.
Okay, we want to vote? Okay, that passes. Letter B and C, there is no action or any further. No. Are we? Yes. Yes, you are correct. So, Ms. Canori, do you want to make that motion?
I move that we approve the revisions to Board Policy GKC Local regarding visitor access to district campuses as discussed in closed session.
Second.
Okay, please vote. All right, that motion passes. And then again, letter C, there was no action on that. So we are now moving back to discussion items and reports. So letter A, federal grants, fiscal year 2024, ESSA, consolidated grant, Every Student Succeeds Act.
Yes,
The
sir.
Perkins Special Education Consolidation Grants. Dr. Fields?
CB local policy that was adopted on March 23rd in 2023 stated that every time we went out to apply for a grant, here are 3 federal grant applications that we'll be applying for, and we're required to let the board know. So we're just letting the board know. We haven't received them yet. We're just applying for them.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move forward to letter B. Policy Update 121 affecting local policies, first reading.
Yes, sir. This is simply the first read. Typically, what we do is pass this out for the board to have a copy of so they can read through it on the first read. And then as we come back to the second read, then we will have discussion on if there are concerns about how it's articulated. In addition, that can be communicated to me through email as well.
Okay. Ms. Ryan, you got a question? Go ahead.
I think I had emailed you this. Are any of these things you all came up with, or these are literally the TASB?
This is the TASB
wording
update
based
120.
on new
Yes,
code,
ma'am.
or their recommended, okay.
They
cool.
send it to all the districts.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move forward. Letter C, discussion on building a plan and continuing with an outside vendor to continue guiding the board through Lone Star governance training to become a highly effective board as a newly formed team of 8. Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes, I put this on the agenda because I think now, as a new board with a new superintendent, it's important for us to continue the work that we had done around setting board goals and staying true to the vision of our focus on student outcomes in everything that we do. And so I wanted to bring that to the board, first to do like some team of 8 training, and then I really feel like the greatest team building we can do is those deep discussions around our goals, and coming to consensus around that. I'm not suggesting that we change them fundamentally, because I know how much work it took us to get where we are, but I want to make sure that we're taking the next step, because I know there was some work that Patricia talked to us about doing with like community advocacy, things like that. But I think there's some fundamental work to do as a new board to understand each other and where we're coming from. And I wanted to suggest that we continue with Patricia, just because I think forming a relationship with a new facilitator might set us back a little bit. But I wanted to bring that to the board to see what other people felt about that.
Ms. Ryan?
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely we talked, Foreman, Storman, Norman, and Performan is what this new team of 8 is going to go through. And so having that go through that process with some sort of facilitator and starting to have a little bit of that time together would be very helpful. I would like to see what other options are out there, what other programs that are offered from the different providers, other than what Patricia provided you guys, and what's on her menu and what's available, and what other providers might be able to, so that at least everybody can evaluate and say, we've picked as a group in consensus what we think, you know, the best person to kind of guide us through this first year is.
Ms. Canoyer, I'm sorry, Ms. Eaton.
Ms. Rodriguez, I agree with you. I'd like to finish up the process that we've started with Patricia and tie in with the constraints as we can apply them to Dr. Fields. I know the majority of them are gonna remain the same, but in case we need to add some more stuff in, because I know there's training that he's been doing with Holdsworth, right? Oh, okay, okay. So, yes, because we put in a lot of time and work with that, working with Patricia, a lot of hours, and I don't want to just throw that away.
Ms. King?
I think it's imperative that we do continue with the training, and so I am in agreement with that. I think that the training that we did have with Patricia, that was great. That was some good training. But I am open to other options in regards to training to get different perspectives. So,
Ms. Canoyer?
I agree. I'd like to bring Patricia back. We did have presentations from several companies when we decided on Patricia. And so we did have the opportunity to look at other proposals back then. And hers was the one that gave us the most leeway to address what we needed as a district, following Lone Star governance, but it was built into a whole plan to address multiple areas and not just Lone Star governance. That was a vehicle that could drive us to get these goals. But there was team building involved in that. There was legislative updates in it. I mean, it covered a whole lot of things. With her background knowledge of what we've done, I think it makes sense to continue with her.
And I'll add that her training in Lone Star governance was effective. I don't think I was on the board when that interview process came through. I think I came in and she was already selected. I'm open to having a fresh perspective as well. At the end of the day, superintendent goals and Lone Star governance, it doesn't matter where the message is coming from as long as we're focused on student outcomes. And so I'm open at least to having some additional discussions. We went through a lot of training with Patricia, so I feel like I know what she's about. And I'm not disagreeable to doing a hybrid, because I do believe, as Ms. King has said, we need differing perspective. It's helpful. So we still have board training as team of 8 to do, but we can also incorporate Patricia to kind of continue with a part of the process. I see them being on 2 tracks. We actually paid Patricia a lot more because we ended up picking up more days when we thought so I know that we probably have money in our budget to have that two-step process, because I respect the past and what we've built. But I also want a fresh way to present it. So what I would ask then is that we consider Patricia going forward, but that we also open up for an additional team of 8 trainer to come in and give some additional discussion and help for us. Ms. Stanford?
All me and Monica have been doing is training. So this just seems like a little more, I don't know what kind of time.
It's team of 8 training.
Oh, well,
It's a
all of it. What kind of time frame is this one?
The team of 8 training is required within, I think, 90 days of new board members coming on board. And so, or it might not be quite that short a time frame, but we have to do it. It's required by law. The timing is, I don't know what the minimum is, like 1.5 to maybe 3 hours or something.
Oh, it's one class.
Yeah, it's just, the team of 8 is just one class. The other one, you know, that whatever proposal that different vendors might come up with for, you know, looking at what the work we've done as a district so far, and then making a proposal about what we might need over the course of the next year for periodic times that we come together. It wouldn't be nearly as intense, I don't think, as the first time around, because it took multiple days and evenings in a short time frame to like knock it all out, because if we left it, you know, you'd lose traction on the work. So those were meetings that we had over, I think we started 2 years ago on that.
In 2021.
And it took us almost a year to get to that piece. That's not what I'm suggesting, doing that whole like intense of a process again. But I do think that as a board, we need an outside facilitator to like help us come together more than the team of 8, because I will name that I have found, I found Patricia, like this, what she can offer can count as our team of 8 training. And when I've experienced a standalone team of 8 training, it's been hit or miss on how effective I think that is in actually building the kind of team that I think we need to form as a board.
Well, just my timeline is to look at the viability of having something early August based on our calendars and our availability for a team of 8, and then obviously go into the fall, because Patricia is more, I mean, more discussion with her. So we'll examine that and see how quickly we can come back with a few. I know that Moat Casey was interested in having some discussion about that, and they talked to Dr. Fields. So there's some options. So let's take a look at them, but just know the timeline in my mind is at best late July, but more than likely within the first 2 weeks in August to do this training. So are there any other discussions on this? All right. So now we're on our last item. It's update on board training, conferences, events, and board committee updates. And I'll start down here with Ms. Knoyer.
Thank you. I went to a whole bunch of things, like we all did. We were pretty busy. I did attend the safety committee meeting, which Mr. Macias now is a member of as well. And there were some really good updates about what has happened in the legislative session. I truly appreciate the partnerships that we have with our surrounding communities, first responders departments. They truly are advocates for Judson, and I appreciate that. There wasn't really anything huge to report that I didn't allude to already earlier. But I do want to take a moment to address a personal point of privilege. We lost somebody important. Dang it, I didn't cry at her funeral, and here I am. Many of you, and I'm talking to the general public out there, Eileen Lindbergh was a teacher in Judson for many, many, many years. And she was someone I looked up to, not a mentor because I didn't work directly with her, but she was very active in the district as an advocate for teachers and for students. When she retired, she became a board member in Judson ISD. 2 years ago, she had a very severe stroke, and she passed away at the end of May from effects from that. And it's a loss, and I just wanted to pay some honor to her.
Teacher, a former teacher.
Eileen Lindbergh.
She said.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes, sir. So once we got past graduations, things have been a bit of a blur for me between work and things. So I think graduations were the last major events that I was able to attend beyond our regular budget workshops and everything. So thank you.
Ms. Eden?
I attended SLI, learned some good stuff, and picked up on some partnerships that I want to share. You know, did you get the email? I mean, the messages from Mr. Dan?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I'm going to be sharing that information with the superintendent to see if we can work some partnerships out with a program where They teach students how to fly planes and helicopters and stuff, and it's free. And anyway, learned a lot of good stuff. SLI was very good, very good. A lot of security stuff. Sat in on quite a bit of that. Thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
Since we've had our last meeting. Going back to the last meeting, thanks to Mr. George for letting me come to the Olympia kindergarten graduation. Next time, don't put a crying kindergarten teacher up there. I didn't even have a kid, and I was getting a little teary-eyed. But it was a wonderful ceremony where every parent got a chance to have their 5 seconds of fame, and apparently we have a lot of astronauts coming out of Olympia, and teachers. I told them to get them all under contract right now. And thanks to Ms. Thomas from Millers Point inviting me to field day. I helped some kid find his shoe, so that was very successful. Attended all the graduations. Thanks to Mr. McMahon from Brown & Brown Insurance for letting me play on his team at the Jeff Golf Tournament. Tons of money made for kids, scholarships, and teacher grants. Can't wait for Lexi's update on the next, Jeff update that we get to, see how much we're gonna be able to give to that organ, or how much they're gonna be able to give away this year to our kids and to our teachers. Went to the Northeast Partnership, as I usually do every month. It's a great chance to, there's 9 different mayors, 5 of them obviously from our district, and all the council people, along with a lot of local businesses. So Kim Cathy, our communications department, was there also. So we're making lots of great partnerships with them. Talked about doing a state of the district updates to them so that everybody, out in our community knows what's going on, especially all of our elected leaders. Great Tri-County Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Got a chance to meet some of the new people in the director positions at Boyceville, which is a great partnership that we have because they're the kids who reside there go to our Judson schools. So looking forward to getting a tour with them and seeing any ways they need us to help partner with the community to support our Judson kids who are residing at Boyceville. And then attended SLI, ISO training, and then code training last night. And I think that's it for my training for the next month. So it's been busy, and that's all I got.
Ms. Stanford?
So I did all the training Monica did, and I went to the Jeff Golf Tournament, and also I've been trying to get to as many of the summer school classes and stuff that have been going on. I saw you. Yeah, I went to Copperfield, and this week I went to Kitty Hawk and Salinas. It's just so great to go through the school and see all the fun activities that they're doing with summer school, but I'm also meeting the teachers. I want to meet as many as I can so they know who I am, and I'm asking them to feel free to keep in touch with me. That's just an invitation I'm making to all the teachers and parents, everyone in the community, to have an open door there. So it's been very, and I bring a little popcorn thing by. And then I happen to see in our kitchen where there's a big popcorn with a big zero thing. They're like, do not popcorn in here. So I don't know what I'm going to do to them with that. But it's been a wonderful experience.
Ms. King?
So I too attended the Summer Leadership Institute last week, and great training there, board officer training, as well as board governance, and so that's about it.
And goodness, I can't believe you guys have been on the board for 30 days. It seems a lot longer. But I'm going to tell you, I did attend SLI, and I had the privilege of hanging around with my colleagues, and we had a lot of interaction, a lot of people we met, a lot of school boards. I met some folks from, I think, Goose Creek ISD, that is essentially the same size as our district, and some of the things they're doing in early childhood development, I'm keenly interested in learning more. I was really impressed with their efforts. So again, we're in the business of best practices, so let's identify some best practices that they're doing. So it was good. It was a good conference. It always is. So that being said, there's no further business. This meeting is now adjourned at 9:38.
I think we need to name that we pulled the superintendent's reports.
Yes, since we didn't talk about them, we did. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez.